All right, today we're going to dive into the revolutionary work of a neuroscientist named Joseph LeDoux. His book, The Emotional Brain, totally flipped the script on how we think about our inner lives. So get ready, because we are about to challenge pretty much everything you think you know. So let me just start by asking you this. What if the very foundation of how you understand your own emotions, fear, love, anger, is just fundamentally wrong? That's the huge provocative question that LeDoux puts on the table. And this quote right here, this is really at the heart of our entire discussion. LeDoux is basically saying that emotions aren't conscious choices. They're not something you decide to feel. They're automatic, biological events that just happen. So, what does that really mean for us?
To really get this, we have to completely rethink what an emotion even is. It's not just a feeling you have. According to LeDoux, it's something way deeper, much more primal than that.
Okay, so here's the core definition from his work. Think of emotions as ancient survival circuits. They're biological functions that have been hardwired into our nervous systems over millions of years of evolution. And their main job? It's not to make us feel something. It's simply to keep us alive. Let's paint a picture to make this super clear. Imagine you're walking in the woods and you suddenly see a bear. Your heart starts pounding, your muscles get tense, you freeze on the spot. All of this happens in a fraction of a second, way before your brain has even had a chance to consciously think, oh, I am scared. That physical, automatic reaction, that's the emotion. And this brings us to a really critical distinction that LeDoux makes. He totally dismantles this myth that emotions and feelings are the same thing. They are absolutely not, and, understanding the difference is a total game changer. So you can see it laid out perfectly here. The emotion is that unconscious biological event. It's the survival circuit firing off. The feeling, that's the conscious subjective experience that comes later. It's your brain becoming aware that its defense system just went into overdrive, and then slapping a label on that whole experience, like fear. Okay, so if emotions are these biological circuits, then where are they in the brain? Well, this leads us to the second big myth we need to bust, this old idea that there's a single, unified emotions center. For the longest time, popular science, and even a lot of textbooks, talked about the limbic system as the emotional part of our brain. And it was a nice, tidy idea, right? That this one specific area was responsible for all of our feelings. But as neuroscience got more advanced, the whole limbic system theory it started to fall apart. For one, scientists couldn't even agree on which parts of the brain were actually in it. Then they found that some of its key structures were more involved in things like memory and thinking. And really, the biggest problem was that one single network just couldn't possibly explain the huge differences between, say, fear and joy and disgust. And this is where LeDoux's updated model comes in. Instead of one big system, he argues the brain has many. There's a defense circuit for handling threats, a feeding circuit for finding food, a circuit for reproduction, and on and on. Each emotion basically has its own dedicated network, custom built by evolution to solve a very specific survival problem. So let's make this really concrete and look at the emotion LeDoux is most famous for studying, fear. It gives us a perfect window into how one of these specialized circuits works in real time. Scientists study this with a process called fear conditioning. It's actually pretty simple. You take a rat, play a sound, and nothing happens. Then you play that same sound right before a mild, unpleasant shock. You do that a few times, and very, very quickly, the rat's brain learns the association. Pretty soon, the rat will freeze in absolute terror at just the sound alone. Its brain has literally been rewired to treat that sound as a life or death threat. What LeDoux discovered is that this learning happens through two key pathways in the brain. The first one is called the low road. It's like a super fast, subconscious shortcut. Information from your senses, like seeing a curvy shape on the hiking path, goes straight to a part of the brain called the amygdala, which immediately triggers the defense circuit. It is the brain's better safe than sorry alarm system. But at the exact same time, that same information is also traveling along the high road. Now, this path is slower. Why? Because it goes all the way up through the cortex, the thinking part of your brain. The cortex analyzes the information in detail and then sends a message down to the amygdala saying, hey, stand down, it's okay. That wasn't a snake, it was just a stick. So the low road makes you jump first, and the high road lets you calm down a second later. Now, this whole dual pathway system, it has some pretty profound implications for how we remember scary or traumatic events. Because it turns out we actually have two totally different kinds of memory for them. And this is illustrated perfectly by a classic, fascinating case study. There was a doctor, Edouard Clapeyrodet, who was treating a patient with severe amnesia. She couldn't form any new memories. So one day, he hides a pin in his palm and pricks her when they shake hands. The very next day, she has absolutely no conscious memory of him or of the pinprick, but when he reaches out to shake her hand, she instinctively pulls away. She has no idea why, but some part of her brain remembered the danger. And this slide right here breaks down exactly why that happened. We have the memory of an emotion. That's the conscious, explicit story that's processed by the hippocampus. That's the part the amnesiac patient was missing. But we also have emotional memory. This is an unconscious, automatic memory processed by the amygdala. It's not a story, it's a conditioned physical response. It's the reason she felt that gut-level aversion to his handshake without having a clue why. Okay, so we've just covered a ton of brain science. I get it. But why does any of this actually matter in our everyday lives? Well, the implications are, frankly, huge. I mean, let's really think about it. If our emotional reactions are really just unconscious survival circuits firing off, how does that change the way we approach things like anxiety or trauma, or even our own self-control? This framework suddenly makes so many of our experiences make sense. It explains why you can't just think your way out of a panic attack. Your amygdala's low road has already hijacked your system. It explains how, in PTSD, a totally harmless sound can trigger a terrifying physical response because an unconscious emotional memory got activated. And it explains why anxiety can feel like it comes from absolutely nowhere. It's often just a defense circuit that has become way too overactive and way too sensitive. So what do we do about all this? Well, LeDoux uses this brilliant term called emotional hygiene. The idea is that mental health isn't about trying to suppress these automatic emotional reactions, which is pretty much impossible. Instead, it's about creating conditions that help us regulate them. This could mean things like mindfulness, therapy, or even just learning to recognize the physical signs of an emotion and pausing before we react. It's all about consciously training our high road to have a better, calmer conversation with that automatic low road. And all of this leaves us with one final, kind of mind-bending question to think about. If that initial spark of emotion just happens to us, automatically and unconsciously, what part are we really in control of? LeDoux's work suggests that our real power doesn't lie in trying to stop the emotional wave from starting, but in learning how to surf it once it begins.